get the roll call. I am here. Alyssa Lane Keene sends her apologies. She's unable to come right now. We know Julie Seastrom is absent today. Is Jemiah Wassam from Coos here? Valerie Switzler from Warm Springs. Diane Tiemann. Michael Cherry from Grand Round. Angela Fasana from Grand Round.
I'm here.
Jennifer Jackson from Klamath. Melissa Montero from Klamath. Becky Cantrell from Coquille.
Good afternoon. I'm here, and Marcia is not joining today.
Okay. Jory Spencer from Umatilla. Jamie Crane from Umatilla. Jesse Jackson from Cow Creek. Jennifer Reed from Cow Creek.
Present.
So we do have 5 of the 9 tribes.
Awesome. Thank you. And I also wanted to just give a moment for all of the additional guests who've joined us to introduce themselves. I guess I'll start by calling on people. So Amber.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amber Feist. I'm an enrolled citizen with the Coquille Indian Tribe, but I'm actually here not representing my tribal community. I'm representing the Northwest Native Chamber. I serve as the programs director for the chamber and have been contracted with DELC to provide technical assistance for the CCIF funds or Child Care Infrastructure funds. And so we will be presenting a little bit more on that today, but I know a few of you, and I've gotten the chance, TJ and I, last Friday, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all more and just appreciate the time this afternoon. And I'll pass it over to Michael.
Thank you so much, Amber Tatala. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm an enrolled member of the Nez Perce tribe, but I also have Yakima and Umatilla descendancy. I am the Oregon Resource Navigator here with the Chamber, and I'm excited to talk more about the work that we're doing with the CCIF funding. But again, just great to meet you all and hold space with you.
Dana, should we pass it to anyone else, any other guests?
Yeah, I saw Malia come off mute, so I thought that Malia was maybe going to go next.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm part of the Verizon people who don't have service, so I cut out of the meeting for a little bit. My name is Malia Skunkap. I'm part of the Burns Paiute tribe. I'm their education specialist and enrolled Burns Paiute, but also Montana Browning Blackfeet. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to meet you all.
Thank you so much. Whitney and Danae, I know you're 2 different people, but go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danae Gonzalez. I'm the Business Systems Implementation Specialist at the Department of Early Learning and Care. And I am actually the contract administrator overseeing the technical assistance contracts with Northwest Native Chamber and First Children's Finance for the Child Care Infrastructure Fund technical assistance. And Whitney is the other half of my team doing that work. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, folks. It's wonderful to see all you today. My name is Whitney O'Connell. I'm the Early Learning Business Support Coordinator for DELC. And like Danae said, I'm kind of her other half.
Thank you. And is it Kara or Kara?
I'm coming. It's Kara. Hi, I'm Kara Tachikawa. I am not connected with any tribes. I've worked with Carolyn and TJ a little bit. Mountain Star is a relief nursery in Central Oregon, and we are trying to determine if our services are helpful in the community at all. And so I'm just here to listen.
Awesome,
I
thank you.
just wanted to get clarification. Malia, are you representing Burns Paiute tribe today?
I am not. I'm sitting in because I was asked by Diane, but I'm not making any decisions on behalf on the Burns Paiute tribe.
But Diane did ask you to sit in for her.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then we would have quorum. If not, we would only have 4 tribes.
All right.
Awesome, thank you. And we heard from TJ earlier, so if Caroline does come in the room and join, you'll have to have her come on camera and say hi to everyone and introduce herself. So, all right, then I think we can start getting into it. Well, and by starting to get into it, I guess what I mean is pass it over to Northwest Native Chamber. Dory, do you want to pull up the slides and share your screen?
Yep, 1 second. Can you all see that? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you want to, I mean, I guess we can see it. It's not full screen, but that should be okay.
Oh, maybe I clicked on my wrong one here. Just a second.
Perfect. And
There
while
we go.
we're kind of getting started, I think, you know, I'm seeing lots of backgrounds and banners and acknowledgement for Orange Shirt Day today. And I think, you know, I just want to show appreciation for those that are representing and showing support for the event, and also to the individuals in this room who have been affected and continue to be affected by, you know, our history of stolen children and boarding schools, whether that be Chemawa or other schools across the nation. And just an acknowledgement for those that are dealing with pain today, extra pain, and acknowledgement of all of that loss that we have as communities. So just, yeah, appreciation for everybody that's supporting, and then also just acknowledging it's a challenging day. I've already introduced myself, but I think one of the things that I want to make sure that I do is also kind of introduce the Northwest Native Chamber a little bit. So I've been working with the Chamber since 2017. We are an organization that is committed to the economic opportunities and benefits for Native peoples across the Northwest. And we found ourselves in this work with CCIF. We've done a lot of work with Business Oregon, a lot of work in business development, you know, working in tribal communities, but also with Native American populations throughout the Northwest area. And we are one of 2 organizations that are funded to do technical assistance. So that's us. And then we also have included First Children's Finance logo here. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the ways that the chamber, oh, sorry, next slide.
Yep, that's okay. 1 second. I got to figure this out. I'll go to this one, but then I'm going to mess around with it a little bit.
Okay. So through the Northwest Native Chamber, we have a lot of programming that I'm not going to kind of get into all of the things that we do. But what I do want to talk about is our 3 pillars of service. And so the work that we do and the ways that we deliver service are through education and growth, relationship building, as well as economic justice and transformation. And through those 3 pillars, you can kind of see some of the programming that we have built, whether that be technical assistance for small businesses. We're also working in the clean energy workforce and contractor development space. We are an Apex Accelerator, which is another word for procurement technical assistance center for folks that are doing government contracting, which includes tribal nations. We have a student award, and really this is where a lot of our direct service flows, is out of this pillar. We also do relationship building. So we're a chamber in name, but we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. That's done a lot through one-on-one connections, networking, as well as a lot of our newsletters and communications channels that we have, which, you know, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those kinds of things. And then economic justice and transformation really gets into a lot of the advocacy and representation and community policy engagement work that we do. And that's a big way of just saying, you know, we really want to ensure that as the state, the counties, the cities are rolling out funds, that they are not only just considering Native populations, but they're also thinking about how to best serve those populations. We also are, you know, an awardee of Vibrant Tribal Economies, really looking at how we can localize our economies and ensure we have recirculation in dollars, so economic benefit is staying within tribal communities. And we are one of 4 members of the Community Economic Coalition. So that's 4 chambers of color that have a coalition who do advocacy work in the state of Oregon. And then we're working on a development program in the city of Portland called the Center for Tribal Nations to really do placemaking and visibility work for Portland's urban Native population. We're going to send this slide deck out, so don't feel like you have to scribble down any of this contact information. But again, I do really want to highlight and uplift that the Northwest Native Chamber is one of 2 funded organizations through DELC to provide TA for the Child Care Infrastructure Fund. And there's, you know, kind of two pathways, but the Native Chamber really, we've dedicated resources and pathways to be especially available for working with tribal nations on this in particular. We really want to see these funds benefiting our communities throughout the state, and we want to ensure that you all have the support that you really and truly need in order to have not only a successful application, but also that support afterwards and ensuring compliance and reporting and all of those things that you know, are really challenging when you are accepting government funds. So next slide. So Business Oregon and the Department of Learning and Care, as well as other state agencies, are working on implementing a funding program to provide financial assistance for childcare infrastructure needs. This is really focused on facilities. It's really focused on the infrastructure that's involved in delivering childcare. And it really is kind of meant to solve some of the complex challenges that our childcare serving organizations have really been facing in these past few years, especially as we've, you know, kind of had an identified childcare crisis. It is a competitive statewide grant focused on providing funds for establishment, expansion, and improvements. As JT kind of hinted at and asked me on Friday, there is not a tribal set aside of these funds in particular, but rather Business Oregon has created an application which clearly identifies if you are from or representing a tribal nation. There is no racial or ethnic questions on the application other than, are you from a tribe? And that's, I think, the first or the second question on the application. And in the bill language where this funding is coming from, it is specifically called out that these funds are to benefit culturally specific childcare centers. So really the goal of this fund is to boost the availability and quality of the facilities and provide resources that are critical for supporting our families and communities. I'm trying to go quick, but I'm also, I want to make sure I can get the point across. Next slide. So for us, the way that we really want to approach this work is, you know, acknowledging and upholding sovereign rights of the 9 federally recognized tribes. We want to enhance the tribe's access to high quality and community-based early learning programs and facilities for tribal families, improve access to culturally responsive programming that honors Indigenous culture, identity, and traditions, support the development of capacity and infrastructure for Oregon tribal early learning centers, and then foster collaboration between tribal communities and state agencies to strengthen early learning childcare centers and providers. The thing that's not on here, and for us really is the way that we're navigating this work, is we understand a lot of times there are capacity challenges when you are accessing whether it be federal or state or county funds, with the amount of reporting and the amount of documentation and what are the rules and what can we spend money on. And we want to make sure that as tribes are looking to implement these dollars, that we can be a resource and an accessible phone call away to be able to work with you on not only what the funds are best used for, but how you can best implement them within the time frame to meet all of the reporting requirements. Next slide, sorry. So applications are due today. JT was right. I was in Warm Springs for another meeting and I stopped in and I was asking their team, if they had heard about this. And of course, Carolyn got into her inbox and there had been a couple of emails about it. And we're really going to be working on doing more outreach as we kind of get through this first round. I want to acknowledge that I'm here on the day that it's due, and that can feel really frustrating and also alarming because we know how grant money works. But this is not a first come, first serve application. This is one where they are making selections. Business Oregon is choosing grant recipients based on, a kind of a tiered approach in terms of how they are pushing the funds out. So just because you're not applying this round does not mean that there's not going to be money next round. And I would argue that, taking the time to really be sure about what it is you want to apply for and having a strategy around that application so that you can have the strongest application is going to be your best bet. Business Oregon is saying that applications will open in early 2025. That's Business Oregon. That's not the chamber. That's not Delk. That's not anybody in this room. So just, an acknowledgement that we hope applications will be open in early 2025. And I'm sure that we'll have an invitation to come back and talk more as that deadline is coming closer if folks have more questions. And then also just one more acknowledgement around funding needing to be spent by May of 2027. So if you're planning on, acquiring land and building a whole new facility, the deadline for pushing those funds out is May 2027. And I'm going to pass it over to Michael to talk a little bit more around some of those specifics. And we're going to move fast, but don't worry, we will be giving this slide deck out and some additional resources if you have more questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Amber, for setting the stage on that. That's great. So to go over the request for grant applications, they specifically target 4 different types of projects or purposes. The first is the planning project, which is up to $75,000. And these funds can be used to help you plan and determine if a child care infrastructure project is feasible. So those include things like surveys, site investigations, or environmental action related to a potential project. The second is minor renovation and repairs. And so this is from $20,000 to a little under $100,000. And these are funds for minor repairs or renovations for your business needs to expand or retain your current childcare offerings. And the third is new construction or major renovation. And these are over $100,000 to $2 million. So these funds include large scale projects such as remodeling a site, adding a new classroom, or even the construction of a new childcare center. And finally, we have property acquisition, which is $20,000 to $2 million. And these funds are used to purchase land, buildings, or accessory dwelling units to establish a child care facility, but to keep in mind that they cannot be used as a private residence. So any situation in which the provider is residing in the home, unfortunately, they would not be able to apply. Can I go to the next slide, please? And so projects eligible under this program are restricted to fixed immovable assets. So these include, of course, like new construction, repairs, and planning projects. And it's also restricted specifically to the state of Oregon. And so here at the Chamber, we're really here to help guide you through this process, on a one-to-one technical assistance support level. So if you're unsure if your project is eligible and you have more questions on what that would look like, you can contact us directly, and we would love to meet with you one-on-one to help you determine if this is something that would be eligible for funding. Next slide, please. So again, I won't go too deep into it because Amber really hit home on it, but it is, we're really Business Oregon is really prioritizing culturally specific organizations. And so these are things that, operate, such as a learning program that is designed to serve a particular cultural community or, serve communities within the geographic boundaries of Oregon or within Indian country of federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon. And so some things to consider are, areas that would strengthen application include improving the degree of childcare slots that are created or preserved, impact on licensing and the health of safety of children, ability to demonstrate project readiness, and overall just sustainability. So these are some considerations to think of if you want to apply. And then next slide, please. So to get into more of what the Chamber does, what we can help with, the Northwest Native Chamber and First Children's Finance are currently offering the one-to-one technical assistance support. And so this includes things like writing a business plan, creating a budget, and accessing business training resources, translation support, record keeping, and even gaining access to our professional service providers that we have at the Chamber. So these are folks who we vetted and who we have an ongoing relationship with, and they provide things like marketing, accounting, tax preparation, bookkeeping, HR, and of course, capital consulting. And so we also have a set of application tools to make the process easier, a lot of templates and budget supports and just overall enhancements, excuse me, and detailed work plan support that can assist you. So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out. We would love to connect. And we will also be hosting a variety of workshops that go in depth into the application process and have more information pre and post award. So again, to discuss what Amber said, this will include things like reporting, monitoring, and kind of that ongoing support that's needed from start to finish. And so that's all I have. And then we can go to the next slide and open it up, I believe, for any questions or considerations. Hi, I see Caroline has their hand raised.
Yeah, this is TJ again. So if we go back a couple slides and you showed the list 1 through 4 of things that these dollars can be used for. If a tribe decides to apply, do you have to pick one of those 4, or are all 4 of them on the table? Or if you have to pick one, can you pick more than one when you're applying? And does it require a separate application for each number that you? So if I want to do major renovation and minor renovation, is that going to go under the same application, or is it going to have to be 2 separate applications for 2 distinct different purposes? You know what I'm saying? So if I have major renovations that need to be done, but I also have minor renovations, that need to be done, do I need to have 2 separate applications into what I can't remember what you call Business Oregon or whatever it is? When it comes to having, so then I would have to do duplicate applications, or would I only have to do 1?
Yeah, great question, TJ. So in short, it is 1 application per facility. So if your tribe has multiple facilities, you could apply for multiple things. I think in this case and scenario, though, 1 application per facility. So you would need to pick one. However, there is an exception to that, and that is if you wanted to go after property acquisition, so project type 4, you could also include new construction. So let's say that building needed some, remodeling of that extent. You could combine those 4 and 3 into 1 single application.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question, and I think I asked Amber this question last week. I had asked her where the dollars were coming from and where these dollars, how they were being, I get now where the dollars are coming from, but I guess my question is, in the future, whoever is providing these dollars, my question is, because when we went through this, it was said that the 9 tribes are being represented here in this call. My question, I guess, or my thought process is we have a lot of other grants and dollars that we come in, whether they're federal or state grants or dollars, that already have a set aside for tribes. And to me, I think Amber had told me this, but it's not necessarily competitive, but it is competitive if I think about it from my end, because I have to go as a tribe and apply for these dollars, where if you're trying to emphasize that these are supposed to be for tribal child care usage, then I would hope that somewhere down the line, if these fundings continue to happen for longer than a year or two, that we start having those conversations about tribes who do have early childhood education centers, or, so that way these dollars are set aside and they're not necessarily competitive dollars, but they're the opportunity for tribes to say yay or nay, we want them, because some may want them and some may not want them. And so that would beg my next question is, in round 1, if the deadline is today and you only have 2 tribes who say they want money, is the rest of the money, that pot of money, just going to be stuck into the next round that is available for more folks to have more money? Or are they going to be if 3 tribes say they want it, it's going to be given up into thirds, and that money is going to be spent and allocated that way? I really wish Amber would have walked into our office on Monday, because I would have definitely had something I would have definitely had an application done by today to make sure, because like I said, we recently have just taken over our early childhood education center. We would just mention to Amber that we just did a major overhaul of our roof. We just did a major roof repair, and then I just found out today that our boiler over at our early childhood education center is needing to be replaced. So, again, this would have been a perfect time to say, hey, you guys got these dollars for renovations. Holy smokes, this, takes a huge burden off of us as a tribe, trying to find dollars to invest into our early childhood education center and be able to provide a new boiler through through an application process like this, knowing that, these are going to be awarded in November, which is going to be here before we know it. So again, I think my biggest thing to Amber was, and I guess to this group, again, I'm sorry for taking up a lot of your time, but I'm new to this and I'm learning. And my biggest thing is, I hope somewhere down the line, whoever has these conversations has that conversation that said, I think tribes might be interested in having some tribal set aside based on what these dollars are, similar to what a lot of other state funding and federal funding are doing. So I really think that, for me, that's my biggest takeaway from this. Is I'm sad I missed the opportunity to apply for this by today, but I'm also grateful that Amber walked in and we had that opportunity to have this conversation, or else I honestly wouldn't even have been on this meeting to hear about these dollars and the fact that they're coming down the road. So again, those are just some of my thoughts, I guess. And I hope that, you take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I'm relatively new to the early childhood education game. I worked there a long time ago as a youngster it's, coming full circle, I guess, so to speak. But thank you for the presentation, and I hope I can get those slides. So.
Yeah, most definitely, TJ. And I just want to reiterate that, I hear you and I appreciate the feedback. I know that this is, for us, a very much so a long-term investment. There will be more rounds of funding. And, we really look forward to, like Amber said, taking the time and space to create a quality application. So I would love to get in touch with you and anyone on this call who would want to kind of go into what that looks like to prepare for this application and what the needs are of the tribes. And again, thank you for your work. Great input. And hopefully we'll have listening sessions and other things in the future to help determine what does that look like in that relational approach to, the government to government approach to tribes, and as Business Oregon continues to work and invest in our communities. Amber, I don't know if you wanted to speak to anything higher in regards to that question, or any plans in the future that Business Oregon might have that you've heard of. I just wanted to give the space if there was.
Yeah, I think I will acknowledge that Business Oregon has its own tribal economic advisory council. I don't know if it's an advisory council or committee, but Business Oregon, is kind of working on this economic development side. And I think this is one of the challenges that we've been seeing for tribes around consultation and engagement is that everybody's doing different things at different places. And sometimes there's, opportunity to make sure that messaging is getting out, but, everything's running through different offices. And I appreciate what you are bringing to the group as we're thinking about advocating for future dollars. And the continuation of programs such as this, because I think that's really critical as we're working with legislatures to actually write policy that we can make sure that we're raising these issues and talking about just the critical underfunding and underinvestment in some of these centers and in tribal communities in general. So definitely something, again, TJ, just appreciate you raising in this room. And I would say like this room is for you to be raising your voice. So just appreciation for, really talking and bringing that into this space.
TJ, I'm Melissa Chatterjee. I'm the director of the Department of Early Learning Care, and hopefully I'll get to meet you in person on Wednesday, but I just wanted to share that I'll be passing along this feedback to the Business Oregon director and deputy director as they think about future rounds and highlight some of the gaps, I think, in the tables that were being leveraged, whether it's the different government to government clusters or us leveraging the Tribal Advisory Committee, the gaps that have kind of surfaced and making sure the right folks knew about this opportunity. And so if there's any other reflections or feedback, happy to follow up with you on Wednesday as well. And we'll pass those along to Business Oregon because we want to see these dollars get to as many tribes who are interested as possible.
Yeah, again, I appreciate that. And I was voluntold I needed to be there Wednesday, but if you know how that goes, I like to joke about that because as I've been trailing Caroline for the last year or so, I'm not volunteered, I'm voluntold to be places, and the 770 cluster is one of those that I get the luxury of being voluntold to go to. But I mean, again, yeah, it's just, I think for us in the tribes here in Warm Springs, and I think having the opportunity and I don't want to say unfortunately because there is going to be a second round of this, and it even sounds like hopefully some further rounds down the road. But just the missed opportunity at the could have been the right time, like I had mentioned before. But having the opportunity to, again, just to be on this platform and to be able to have that opportunity to listen and hear, all the things that are going on. I was a little I don't want to say worried, but when Amber walked in off the street and I don't have no clue, so I'm Googling where she's from, what she's doing, what Business Oregon is, and I'm trying to figure out all this stuff on the fly. And, I told her before I left on Friday, I said, hey, make sure you send me this email because if Caroline can't get on, I'll make sure that I can get on. So, luckily I was able to get on here. And like I said, I really hope that finding a way to have that government to government relationship grow a little more, maybe with Business Oregon, and being able to say, hey, this is what other folks are doing. Like I said, Amber, I think, said it very well that I don't think tribes are very well. They're always underfunded when it comes to certain stuff, and I think education is one of those. And the opportunity, I had asked her, heck, I want the $2 million so I can go find a way to build myself a whole new facility, because our facility is, I think I said it was built in the early 90s or late 89 or 90, and so it's been a while. So obviously there's some much needed upgrades and some stuff that I think we could utilize these funds for. And that's what really perked my ear before she had left. So again, thank you, Alyssa. And I'm sure I will see you on Wednesday, because that's where I'm going after this, is to set that room up again for tomorrow and Wednesday. So
thanks, TJ.
And I don't, TJ, I don't want this to feel like there's an emergency urgentness about this, but if you there are still a few hours available for applying for this. And if the boiler is like a critical foundational part around operations, as you all are continuing to look, and it's something that you all want to prioritize. Michael has put her email in the chat, and she's available all day today for technical assistance and getting applications in and navigating some of the technical issues going on with submitting applications too. So I know it's busy. I know it can feel rushed, but if you want to just get in there and look at the application or even schedule a future conversation, Michael's email address is in there, and we definitely want to be a resource for you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad that we were able to have some time for this discussion, and hopefully for those who have applied that you do get funds and that anyone else is able to take advantage of the next round. And I also it makes me very appreciative of having this space because that hearing the struggles about the child care infrastructure funds, Business Oregon, maybe not consulting with the tribes just makes me very thankful for the work that we've been able to do so far for early learning. So we will share the slides from the meeting. There's this one and then a longer, more in-depth one. So we'll get that out after the meeting concludes today, and you'll have all the contact information as well. It's in the chat so that you can get in touch with Northwest Native Chamber and get your application done. 4:59 p.m. There is still some time.
Thanks, Dana. It was nice meeting everyone, and look forward to getting to know you all more.
Yes, we'll definitely have to have you and Michael come back. All right. Well, as long as Dory's internet is still working, you want to pull up the other slide deck, pretty please?
Yep. Can you
yeah,
see it?
I can see it. Go ahead and keep going. We can start here. So real quick, we have a couple things to talk about. Two things are reviewing feedback from the draft language. We have some clarifying components that we just want to discuss with the TAC, and then also we are wanting to follow up on the funding needs for the Tribal Early Learning Fund for the next biennium. We've heard back from a couple of tribes, and so I do have a slide that we're going to move to the end just in the sake of time, because we really want to make sure that we're able to cover the clarifying pieces about the draft language first. And so that's what we're going to get into. For our timeline, we do have until October 3rd to get the draft language back to Legislative Council, where once we get the chance to talk through there's basically like 6 questions that I sent out in advance on Friday that we're going to go over today, where we want your input. And once that's gathered, then I'll send a follow-up to the Dear Tribal Leader letters that we had sent out initially about the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund for consideration. So the other piece is October's meeting. We originally had discussed moving it out because we thought that the draft language wasn't going to be returned until 10/25, and we already have it back, and that's what we're talking about today. So we don't really need to move out the October meeting. So if it's okay with you all, we can just keep it on the 9th of October. It's from 3 to 4:30, the normal time. So if you are good with just leaving it as it is, can you give me a thumbs up or let me know otherwise? I see. Okay, Sonia can't attend, so we can still look at rescheduling it.
We'll just be leaving for NIA
Okay.
that
That's
day.
the point.
Hey,
We-
Dana, did you see my message?
Yeah, the public meeting notice is another consideration. So, all right. Well, I have that email survey that I had sent before with scheduling, so I can just send that back out. And for anyone who didn't fill out the survey, to get some dates and times that will work, because I'm sure, Sonia, you're not the only one going to NIEA, and I'm imagining it'll be a hard week for others too. Would you mind going to the next slide, Dory? Skip that one for now. Perfect. All right, so following the meeting that DELC was able to have with DOJ and a legislative council, we were able to firm up some specific questions and components that we want to clarify tax intention so that we get it right. And the first, go ahead and go to the next slide, Dory.
Dina, can I just add some clarifying language here?
Yes.
Okay, so just for the Tribal Advisory Committee members to know is that there were some reasons that Ledge Council did make changes in the language that were legally significant. One of their just main concerns was the Equal Protection Clause in referring to American Indian and Alaska Native children and educators throughout the text. We did talk around the legal parameters and what our DOJ counsel is comfortable with moving forward. So the changes and amendments in the current language is the compromise that you saw there. But there were other areas of the draft legislation that weren't necessarily changed because of the legal significance per se. It was just because it is a uniform statutory convention that the Oregon Legislative Council uses throughout drafted legislation, so that when legislation is read by members of the public, they know what certain terms of art are across different laws within the state. And so those were some of the conversations that we had between our DOJ counsel and Ledge counsel and where we could make those changes. So when we changed language back or there was a compromise, that was the reflected change of language. But then we had these other questions that we wanted to bring back for conversation with the Tribal Advisory Committee. And sorry for jumping in. I just wanted to give a little bit of framing as to why this language changed from last week.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. So just, yeah, I would say in addition to what Chris said, in overall, a lot of the elements that need to be more specific, we can spell out in rule later. So we don't need to worry about capturing every single detail here. And that most of the changes that Ledge Council did make are not legally significant. And most of it is just like what Chris said, that it's just that these are what pertains to bills in Oregon. And so now we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about definitions last week, and in our discussion with DOJ and Ledge Council, these definitions are not going to have a negative impact by pulling them out. The main important one was OTELA, the Oregon Tribal Early Learning Alliance, and that was still replicated and defined elsewhere. So these being moved is not causing a detriment. What we did update based on the conversation from TAC last Monday was that it needs to be more inclusive. And so the who is a plan student, which we can also talk about having a different terminology than plan student, but that and the tribal educator were made to be more expansive. And so later for the educator one, it kind of is split up into two sections. So later in the objective section, it expands to include those who serve plan students. So it means that both educators or providers who are tribal, whether they work for a tribe or not, and educators / providers who are working for a tribe, even if they're not native, could still benefit from tribal early learning funding. So the two questions that come out of this is, does the new language cover all the purposes that TAC desired? And is there a better phrase than plan student, which the TAC might prefer.
And Dana or Chris, just to clarify, this is a point of preference, not a point of legal significance, right?
Correct.
So if there's no preference, I think there are some sections of this that do have legal significance. And so I don't know, Dana, if we want to put a pin in this one and make sure we get to those ones.
Yeah, we definitely could. So in our follow-up, we can include this question. The plan student terminology is just very common, and it's what's used in other legislation. So we might be kind of stuck with it, but we can move on to talking about, let's see, what is the next thing that's legally significant? Okay, go ahead and skip that. Okay, so plan objectives. This is what the original plan objectives were. And so for clarification, will you go to the next slide, Dory? So the language had changed from saying may to shall. And the reason that this is important is because where it's talking about this plan, what it's doing is it's making DELC to include all of these objectives in the plan, and it's not actually making the tribes do anything. So it's saying that DELC shall include all of these objectives in the tribal early learning plan, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the tribe is going to have to do all of those things. And so the same question of if we want shall or may applies to the strategies section. So Dory, go ahead and go to, I think the next slide should be strategies.
Can I just add a little portion just on the legal significance here? So if folks have questions around why things changed and were some of the objectives moved to the strategies or strategies moved up to the objectives, what Ledge Council did when they were looking at this and saying, when DELC is ultimately responsible to make sure that this plan is actually authored, and it is our job and our responsibility to work with the tribes in consultation to make sure that it addresses all of these objectives. And that's why it says must. In moving to the actual strategies, since the money is going to be going out to the tribes via a grant mechanism, it was changed to may here, so that within that grant program to give tribes funding, that tribes could do one of the strategies, two of the strategies, all of the strategies, and they would be able to do that and give them that flexibility, and not that they had to have a grant application or an application that addressed all of these. I mean, they could, but this gives them more flexibility as a tribe to choose which strategies work best for you, or which strategies the tribe is ready to implement at that time with this funding. And so that's why there's that difference in language and why it's legally significant, and why there was that change there. So it's really meant to give tribes more flexibility in how they're implementing the use of the funds. Sorry about that, Dina.
No, thank you for adding that. So with that said, the question is, do we also want the plan strategies that we have laid out? And this is basically everything that wasn't included under objectives. Sorry, I don't know if someone else is going to say something. But do we want them also to be a shall or a must rather than may? And the legal importance of that is, Chris?
Is that this actually gives tribes the flexibility to use the fundings to implement the strategies that works for them. So this area is really about flexibility. And the previous portion is more about the accountability of DELC as an agency in creating a plan to address all of those objectives.
So Dana, I want to make sure we're separating. We're talking about may and shall as the issue, but they have pretty big implications. So when we're talking about the strategies, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, what Legislative Council has proposed is a may to give tribes flexibility in how you would spend the funds and implement the plan. In the objective section with the shall, DELC is then required to administer the plan as outlined.
Yes, and to work with tribes in consultation, and the plan has to address all of those things. But that's the must is really for the agency to work in consultation with the tribes in the development of the plan on those objectives that addresses each one of those things moving forward. And the strategies, it may is the flexibility that tribes have in the use of funds.
So as Legislative Council's currently proposed this language, DELC is responsible for working with the tribes and must work with you all on the implementation and development of the plan. And you all as tribes may follow any number of these strategies, but you don't have to do all of them. So is there any concern in requiring DELC to consult with tribes and maintaining flexibility for tribes in implementing the strategies?
This is Angie Fasana, and I support the flexibility, and so I would vote to leave the word may.
Thanks, Angela.
I trust Angela's interpretation, so I will say we support that as well. She is a lawyer too.
Thanks, Sonia.
Sounds good. Yeah, Angie's amazing in that way. Is there any other thoughts or comments about this? All right. One question though, and I just want to make sure, even though it says it may provide strategies too, and so this is, I guess, a question for Chris. If there's a strategy that might not exactly fit into A through D, because it says may, would it be something that could still be explored, or would we have to add something like, but not limited to make that work?
We would have to add something, but not limited to, because they're so explicit in these actual strategies as a list. So if we wanted to have that additional language, we could. And then what we would say to Ledge Council is that that's something that would be further explored in our rule set.
We've heard a lot of support for flexibility. So given that, thoughts on adding a but limited to statement in here, but not limited to?
I'm sorry, Dana, which part would that go after? Which one?
The plan, the first number 4 up there, that the plan developed and implemented under this section may provide strategies, but are not limited to. I don't know exactly what the phrasing would look like, but it would basically say that in addition to A through D, there could be more strategies.
Yeah, I like the flexibility.
I support that as well. I always support anything that gives us more options. I mean, I do think that these A through D are pretty widespread. Like you could fit most things underneath those. I can't think of anything that we do that we wouldn't fit right now, but I I'm always supportive of flexibility because we all operate such different programs.
Definitely. Thank you both for the feedback. And so we can circle back with Ledge Council and see if we can do a but not limited to, and then we'll explore that later in rule. So I think our next section is membership. Dory, perfect. Okay, so the main question is about agency representatives. So when when TAC first worked on the language, it was that the department may, well, actually it did say shall appoint non-voting ex officio members, including but not limited to, and then we had a list of several agencies. And so Ledge Council did keep these agency designees as mandatory non-voting. And so I think what the difference was is that we had including but not limited to, so that we could kind of say, yes, this one, no, this one. So the question for the Tribal Advisory Committee is whether or not the agency representatives should be mandatory, or if it should only be a shall include for DELC, and that all other agencies could be may include.
So did they feel strongly enough about this part that they wanted it left the way that it was?
No,
Okay.
Sonia, sorry, I was just wanted to add here, there was not legal significance here. The reason why they changed it is just for uniformity across other bills or laws within the Oregon legislature. There is flexibility in how this is formatted and outlined. They were just using that uniform language, but they're open to changes here. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. And these are non-voting, so the absence of them in any meeting wouldn't prevent us from having quorum and continuing on with the work we need, right?
Correct. Yeah, so the only difference is whether or not these other agency representatives would be at the meetings or not, and their presence wouldn't make a difference because they are non-voting, at least in one regard. But if they are made to be there, there could definitely be learning opportunities for the work that's going on in their own agencies. So just thinking about if it's beneficial or not for it to be a shall include versus a may include.
So it looks like even the original language was a shall appoint, and the new language is the same, shall appoint.
Hmm.
So it just looks like a formatting thing for me, I guess. And instead of putting but not limited to, they added the small section B down at the bottom, giving us the ability to add from other departments. But even the original language was a shall. Am I reading it incorrectly?
No, you're not reading it wrong. I think that at least this is the way that I interpreted it, is that it was listed as including but not limited to for the several agencies that were listed, where the TAC would be able to say, yes, this agency we want to have there, rather than saying all of these agencies are mandatory in plain language. And so I think either way would work. You're right, it did say shall.
Chris, is this a legally significant? If it's not legally significant change, then I think we can probably.
Yeah, I think that for me, the new language is fine. And again, this is just Angie. I think if they're trying to make it consistent with other laws, I don't see anything glaring from what we originally submitted.
I
All right. Sounds good. There's one more membership question on the next slide. About the parents and educators. So earlier in the text, the term tribal educator was defined as being a teacher, a childcare provider, administrator, or other school or childcare employee. And so in having the non-voting members who are either tribal educators and then the parents, just maybe pulling in that language. So since it's already defined, and for the parent side of things, wanting to know if it should just be parent or expanded to parent or caregiver so that it's more broad, and potentially pulling in the term plan student or whatever term we might be able to coin besides plan student.
So, and for a little bit of context here, for B, for the parents, it's legally limiting how it is written now on who these representatives could be. But when speaking with Ledge Council, there wasn't a legally significant reason why this was phrased this way. So we can change it for how the Tribal Advisory Committee members want to see this. I would say if we wanted to make it more open and you wanted to keep the term plan student, it could just read at least 2 non-voting members who are parents or caregivers of children of plan students.
I think it should have caregivers. Even in my program, I'm getting even more foster parents or DHS employees who are applying as the guardian over the student that's in care. So I think we should expand it to be inclusive of caregivers of the children.
I agree. And then if we have a definition of caregiver somewhere, just making sure that we include all of those people.
All right, so it would be, the language would be at least 2 non-voting members who are parents / caregivers of plan students enrolled in early childhood care or education programs. And then for the educators, it would just be that they're either tribal educators or providers of early childhood care or education programs that are operated by a tribe. So that way, on the parent side of things, it's including parents or caregivers. And then on the provider side of things, that means it would be open to somebody who works for a tribe or doesn't work for a tribe, but is a tribal educator. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm just wondering, without seeing the full text or remembering everything that's in here, I mean, we could say at least 2 non-voting members who are caregivers of planned children. Because if we've defined caregivers as parents, foster parents, guardians, you know, that type of thing, then you wouldn't need that would include parents. So you wouldn't have to do parents / caregivers. And then if we stick with planned children, and planned children are children who are enrolled in early childhood care or education programs that are operated by tribes, then you don't have to put all of that in there either. So it would just shorten it to at least 2 non-voting members who are caregivers of planned children. Does that cover everything if those 2 terms are defined elsewhere? Caregivers and planned children.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Chris, from the legal perspective, does that sound like something that should be doable? I don't know if there's any other examples of defining caregiver.
Yeah, we can work on pulling this together.
Okay, awesome. But I guess the clarification on the tribal educator for membership as an advisory member, based on what we've talked about before, I believe the intention was if someone is a provider, for instance, but they work in community and not for a tribe, but they still serve tribal children, would we still want them to be eligible to serve as an advisory member, or would we only want advisory members to be those tribal educators that work for a tribe already?
Yeah, that's where I like the old language, where it was at least 2 providers of early learning or childcare programs operated by a tribe or serving tribal children. So that would have been inclusive of those providers that aren't working for the tribe per se. So that's very different than C.
And I think Ledge Council is open to having that change. You just need to bring that forward.
Yeah, so we can.
I like the first one as well, because then it could be either or. It's just saying 2. So if we and because again, we in the first iteration of the TAC, when we had providers that weren't operated by a tribe, they still it's inclusive of them, because C is it's more limiting.
Yeah.
Can we just bring back to Ledge Council the original language and make sure they understand the difference, and however they want to incorporate that?
Yep, we can do that.
Because I'm hearing, I think, that agreement that what's proposed isn't exactly what's desired here.
Yeah, we can work on that. I think the next question is about the chair structure, and if TAC would like there to be a chair structure defined here in statute, or to leave it as something that could be changed, leave the flexibility through rule. So the language in 4 through 9 is pretty much boilerplate language that's used for committees that Ledge Council added in. And so the question then remains, if TAC wants a co-chair, for instance, for the future OTELA body, is it okay to leave it as something that's all in rule, as it's not legally required? Thanks for adding that, Chris.
I propose moving it to rule. Anything we can move to rule, the more flexibility we have to change it at a later date, since this is sort of a brand new thing that we're trying to do.
All right, so then from number 4, we'll work on removing the part about having a chairperson. And then I think that should do it. Is there anything else, Chris, that you have to add?
Just that we will take this feedback. Our feedback is due to DOJ and Ledge Council for this review by October 3rd. So even if you have other additional thoughts that you want us to consider, if you want to send them by email, we can. And as a reminder, this is just reiterate changing the draft as it is right now. There will be times throughout session that we can address the language further if there are additional concerns that come up as we're reviewing them and as the TAC is working through this language. But just wanted to say that Ledge Council and DOJ were really impressed by how much work and intention the TAC members have put into drafting this language, and really appreciate the legal nuances and the nuances of language for the plan and the fund moving forward. So just wanted to give everyone kudos for the work that they've done on this and really digging in to this language. And I think that's all we have for now. That Kate Dennison, our government affairs manager, may have more details of the legislative concepts drafting process come forward to us, and we know more about, but that's as much as I have right now.
Thank you, Chris. I think the only other item was going back to the funding. So that's at the very beginning, Dory. Thanks for doing the PowerPoint. So again, for context, or for those who weren't here when this discussion happened, the agency wasn't able to request for Tribal Early Learning Fund dollars in our agency's budget, but we were directed to find out from the tribes how much each tribe would reasonably be able to spend for the Tribal Early Learning Plan Fund for the next biennium, which is 2025 through 2027. And it is a deviation from how funding was distributed via OTELA in the past, which was just done evenly. So if we go this route based on what each tribe thinks they'd be able to spend, there is a consideration that that's different than how it's done before, and we could always look at going back to an equal distribution or some other kind of funding formula or other method in the future. But we do just need to hear from everyone of what their numbers are. We've received a couple, and so we appreciate those. And so if you'd like to, you can drop it in the chat or come off mute of if you've gotten the dollar amount, so that we can put that together to inform the governor's recommended budget.
Dana, if I can add, I think there's a question for you all. So the two figures on this slide, 1 million and 133,000, are two numbers we got from different tribes. So you can see the pretty big delta. So I know, as Dana mentioned, the TAC has elected to do equal distribution amongst all tribes with the current available funding. And so as we are making a recommendation to the governor, we need to know from you all, are we maintaining that? In which case we would pick the lowest figure that any tribe is able to spend, or would the TAC like to explore tribe-specific award amounts? And this would not include Preschool Promise, which we have a Dear Tribal Leader letter out for. It would not include the Birth Through 5 literacy funds, which we had a Dear Tribal Leader letter out. So it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to access resources. But I think that's the big question is, in our recommendation to the governor, is it an equal distribution between tribes? Or is it, in which case, would it be the lowest amount a tribe can spend? or should it be responsive to the capacity of each tribe to spend the dollars?
Well, it's kind of hard to go that way right now if you've only received 2 responses, depending when that needs to go in. So, you know, if you go with the lowest, it's not respecting the amount that the other tribe could spend. But then if you don't get a response to the other tribes, I mean, if you did an equal amount with language that is flexible, that maybe if a tribe comes back and says, well, we could spend 3/4 of that, then the quarter go to the tribe that has a greater need. I mean, I think what's really hard, and I don't know if you've received a response from our tribe yet. We've been really busy and I haven't touched base with Alyssa in depth in the last couple weeks, but from the tribes that I have talked to, it's the not knowing if it's come. You can't designate it towards like raising the teacher pay or aid pay or hiring if you don't know if the money's going to be there, and then you don't get it until close to the end of the first year of the biennium. It makes it really difficult to plan that way, that even for a tribe to say put up that money for staff wage and then you know, redo it when the money comes in if you're just not sure when it's ever going to come in. And again, a year is hard to wait into a biennium, so then it leaves tribes to feel like, oh, you know, we have to spend all this money in the short amount of time.
Absolutely. I think our goal, Sonia, and there'll be a difference, I think, between starting this up and maintaining. But once we know this ledge concept is able to go forward, recognizing it still has to go through the legislative process, we would likely be creating the grant agreements starting now, so that you all can go through your own processes for approval, so that you're not getting the dollars after year 1, but ideally you're getting them as close to July 1, 2025 as possible. And then in future biennia, it would just be maintenance, replacing it with updated dollar figures, any adjustments that kind of emerge over the bienniums. That's the hope. That would be our goal, so that it becomes a reliable funding source.
And I think if that was so and it works out that way, tribes' needs may change at that point based on, yes, they are going to receive it consistently and can kind of count on it.
Yep. Yeah, and what we're proposing is like the Otella funding, as you've called it, you know, it becomes part of our permanent budget. We want to be really clear that this doesn't get allocated as one time, but is a designated source of funds, dedicated source of funds, I should say. Doesn't mean we can't go back and ask for more in future biennia and increase it. But if this becomes a $2 million pot of money, we want to make sure that it is maintained and then hopefully grows down the road. And we can send a follow-up email for folks to let us know by the end of the week or so what a feasible amount would be, and we can share that back out with you all to kind of determine what's the best path forward.
You know, and maybe just putting it in the simplest, you know, terms as possible, you know, with that question, you know, would get a faster result.
Yeah, we'll separate it from the doodle polls and all the other requests. You can just handle them. Yeah.
This is Becky. I think something else to consider is the indirect and for the tribes, because that is different across the board. And then if there is an indirect cost cap on it, might determine like if there's more money, but there's a cap on it, that's more funds that the tribe has to put up.
Yep,
And so that's just something to consider too.
it's a great call out. Thanks, Becky. We can make that clear.
Yeah, and just also being clear that this is 2 years really, with it being biennium funding.
Mhm.
So when you consider indirect and you consider even just opening, say you opened one classroom, that's going to be significant with indirect, and say it's an infant toddler classroom with the ratios the way they are, hiring the staff to operate that and then to run it for 2 years. It's
Mhm.
pretty expensive,
Expensive.
really quick.
Yep.
I have an event coming up, so I do need to go. Was there anything else
No,
that we needed?
No, we're actually over time. So thank you all for being here. I have some follow-up emails that are going to be coming. So we'll have one about the funding and then another one about October scheduling and the Northwest Native Chamber Childcare Infrastructure Fund slides, and then follow up on the Dear Tribal Leader letters about the birth through 5, or not birth through 5, sorry, Tribal Early Learning Fund. So too many acronyms floating around in my head today. It is Monday. So anyway, I'll follow up and then you'll have your couple other items to do. And I just noticed what shirt you have. I almost bought that one on Amazon. So yes.
That's beautiful.
Thank you all for being here and for your input. Got a lot accomplished. So thank you. We'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.